A gorilla goes into a bar and orders a martini. This totally amazes the bartender, but he thinks, what the heck, I guess I might as well make the drink, so he mixes the martini. He then walks back over to give it to the gorilla, and the animal is holding out a $20 bill. Well, now the bartender is just at a loss for words. He can't believe that a gorilla walked into his bar, ordered a martini, and then actually had a $20 bill to pay for it. So, in amazement, he takes the 20 and walks to the cash register to make the change. While he's standing in front of the cash register, he stops for a second and thinks to himself, let me try something here and see if the gorilla notices anything. So, he walks back over to the gorilla and hands him $1 in change. The gorilla doesn't say anything, he just sits there sipping the martini. After a few minutes, the bartender just can't take it anymore. You know, he says to the gorilla, we don't get too many gorillas in here. And the gorilla says, at $19 a drink, I'm not surprised. A Texan walks into a bar in Ireland and clears his voice to address the crowd of drinkers. He says, I hear you Irish are damn good drinkers. I'll bet $500 American dollars to anybody in here who can drink 10 pints of Guinness back to back. The room is quiet, and no one takes up the Texan's offer. One man even leaves. 30 minutes later, the same gentleman who left shows back up and taps the Texan on the shoulder. Is your bet still good? Asks the Irishman. The Texan says yes and asks the bartender to line up 10 pints of Guinness. Immediately, the Irishman tears into the pint glasses, drinking them all back to back. The other patrons cheer as the Texan watches in amazement. The Texan gives the Irishman his money and says, if you don't mind me asking, where did you go for the past 30 minutes? The Irishman replies, oh, I had to go to the pub down the street to see if I could do it first. A lone cowboy nobody knew walks into a mining town bar. He orders 2 drinks, which he downs slowly. When he was done with his drinks, he paid the bartender and walked out to see that his horse with all his stuff was missing. He turns around, walks back in the bar, pulls his guns from his holster, and shoots them in the air. Whichever one of you cow dung stolen my horse better have it back by the time I finish my next drink. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do what I did in Texas. And trust me, I don't want to ever do that again. He walks back to the bar, gets another drink, and slowly drinks it. The people in the bar started murmuring, talking amongst themselves, and looking at the stranger with fear in their eyes. The stranger finishes his drink and walks out, and his horse is there where he left it. He got up on it when the bartender and the bar patrons ran out after him. The bartender said, Mister, we're sorry for what happened, but please tell us what happened in Texas after somebody stole your horse. The stranger looked at him and said, I had to walk home. A man sits down next to a woman at the bar. He orders a beer and notices the TV above the bar showing the 5 o'clock news. The news is covering someone standing on the edge of a bridge with the police trying to talk him down from jumping. The man at the bar looks to the woman next to him and says, I bet you $10 he jumps. The woman looks at the man and says, I'll take that bet. A few minutes go by and the man ends up jumping off the bridge. So the woman says, well, you were right, and slides $10 to the man at the bar. He slides the money back and tells her, I can't in good conscience take the money. They showed this on the 4 o'clock news earlier. I knew he was going to jump. The woman leaves the money on the bar and replies, well, I saw the 4 o'clock news too, but I didn't think he would jump twice. A guy stuck his head into a barber shop and asked, how long before I can get a haircut? The barber looked around the shop full of customers and said, about 2 hours. The guy left. A week later, the same guy stuck his head in the shop and asked, how long before I can get a haircut? The barber looked around the shop and said, about an hour and a half. The guy left. The barber turned to his friend and said, hey Bob, do me a favor. Follow him and see where he goes. He keeps asking how long he has to wait for a haircut, but he never comes back. A little while later, Bob returned to the shop laughing hysterically. The barber asked, "So, where does he go when he leaves?" Bob looked up, wiped the tears from his eyes, and said, "Your house." A priest goes into a barber shop, gets a haircut, thanks the barber, and asks how much he owes him. The barber says, "Father, you're a holy man, a man of the cloth. I couldn't charge you. It's on the house." The priest says, "Thank you very much," and leaves. The next day, magically appearing on the doorstep of the barber shop are 12 gold coins. A few days later, a minister goes in for a shave and a shine, and when the time comes to pay, the barber says, "No money, please. You're a spiritual leader, a man of the cloth. It's on the house." The next day, magically appearing on the doorstep are 12 rubies. The following week, a rabbi comes in, gets a haircut, and goes to pay. And the barber says, "No, Rabbi, you are a learned man, a wise man. I can't take any money from you. Go in peace." And the next day, magically appearing on the doorstep of the barber shop are 12 rabbis. My first appointment with a new dentist. Have you ever been guilty of looking at others your own age and thinking, "Surely I can't look that old"? Well, you'll love this one. My name is Alice Smith, and I was sitting in the waiting room for my first appointment with a new dentist. I noticed his diploma, which had his full name. Suddenly, I remembered a tall, handsome, dark-haired boy with the same name had been in my high school class some 30-odd years ago. Could he be the same guy that I had a secret crush on way back then? Upon seeing him, however, I quickly discarded any such thought. This balding, gray-haired man with the deeply lined face was way too old to have been my classmate. After he examined my teeth, I asked him if he had attended Morgan Park High School. Yes, I did," he beamed with pride. "When did you graduate?" I asked. He answered, "In 1967. Why do you ask?" "You were in my class," I explained. He looked at me closely, then that ugly, old, bald, wrinkled, fat, gray-haired man asked, "What did you teach?" An engineering student found a frog on his way to class. "If you kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful princess," the frog said. The student smiled, thought for a minute, and put the frog in his bag and kept walking. After a few minutes, he heard the frog calling out again, so he took it out. "If you kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful princess and go out on a date with you." The student smiled, put it back in his bag, and kept walking. After a few minutes, he heard the frog calling out again, so he took it out. "If you kiss me, I'll turn into a princess, go out on multiple dates with you, introduce you to my parents, who knows what will happen after that." He smiled and started to put it back in his bag. "Wait, why won't you kiss me?" "Well, I'm incredibly busy with school right now, so I don't have time for a girlfriend. However, a talking frog is really cool." A woman comes home early and finds her husband in bed with a girl. She is furious and threatens to kill them both. The husband says, "Believe me, darling, this is just a misunderstanding. I was driving home and saw this young lady trying to catch a ride, so I decided to give her a lift. I ask her where she needs to go, and she tells me she wants to visit some relatives but isn't sure about their address. So I took her home so she could check our phone book. Once there, I saw her dress was pretty ragged, so I decided to give her your old dress. Nearly 2 years that it's been hanging in the closet and you never wore it. Then I saw her shoes were also about to fall apart, so I gave her your old shoes, which have been doing nothing but collecting dust for 3 years. Of course, she said thanks and then asked, 'Excuse me, sir, but is there anything else in this house your wife never uses?'" A despondent young woman who had lost her job and her house had decided to commit suicide. She was walking along a bridge across the harbor, getting the nerve to jump in, when a young man saw her. "Don't do it," he called out. He looked at her and realized she was incredibly beautiful. He came closer. "What's wrong?" he asked. The woman told him. "Okay, here's the thing," he said. "I'm a crew member on a ship that leaves for Europe tomorrow morning. How about you come with me on the ship? I'll bring you food and drink." He slid his arm around her. I keep you happy, you keep me happy. She agreed. After all, there wasn't much else to do. She didn't have family. The man was quite handsome as well. No harm in trying. The next morning, he hid her in one of the lifeboats on the ship with a pillow and a blanket. Every night, he brought her 3 sandwiches and a piece of fruit, and they made love until dawn. One day, about a week after the affair started, the captain was doing his rounds and found her inside one of the lifeboats. "What the hell are you doing here?" She explained what was going on. "I get food and a trip to Europe, and he gets to screw me." "He sure does, sweetheart. This is the Sydney Harbor Ferry." I was about to propose to my girlfriend when my roommate Joseph barged into the room out of nowhere, tripped, and fell over, breaking a glass table with his face. Totally ruined the mood. Now, I don't know Joseph that well. I don't even remember where he was from, but let's say I put my plans on hold to help him through his injuries. Joseph had gotten a big glass shard in his eye, making him completely blind in that eye. He was walking around with one of those big cotton pads on his eye for a couple of months. Then suddenly he disappeared, along with my girlfriend. Apparently, they'd bonded during the time after his injuries and eloped together, leaving me behind without as much as a note. I tried to track them down, but never could. In conclusion, if it hadn't been for Joe with his cotton eye, I'd have been married a long time ago. Where did you come from and where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton-Eye Joe?
The day after a man lost his wife in a scuba diving accident, he was greeted by 2 grim-faced policemen at his door. "We are sorry to call on you at this hour, Mr. Wilkins, but we have some information about your wife." "Well, tell me," the man said. The policeman said, "We have some bad news, some good news, and some really great news. Which do you want to hear first?" Fearing the worst, Mr. Wilkins said, "Give me the bad news first." So the policeman said, "I'm sorry to tell you, sir, but this morning we found your wife's body in San Francisco Bay." "Oh my God," said Mr. Wilkins, overcome by emotion. Then, remembering what the policeman had said, he asked, "What's the good news?" "Well," said the policeman, "when we pulled her up, she had 2 5-pound lobsters and a dozen good-sized Dungeness crabs on her." "If that's the good news, then what's the great news?" Mr. Wilkins demanded. The policeman said, "We're going to pull her up again tomorrow morning." A man is walking through the park when he spots an elderly man crying his eyes out on a park bench. Feeling empathic, he sits down beside the man and tries to initiate conversation. "Troubles with the wife?" he asks gently. Wife? No, not at all. I have an amazing wife at home. She's a beautiful person. We've been married for 50 years and she's an amazing cook too." "Oh, trouble with your kids?" "My kids? No, not at all. I've got a litter of handsome and successful kids at home, and they all married great people that I approve of." "Really? Well, money trouble then." "Money? No. I got all the money I could possibly want at home in my safe. I inherited millions from my father. I invested all of it, and I'm getting tens of thousands of dollars in return every month." "Well, is there a problem with your house then?" "My house? No. I live in a beautiful 3-story mansion with servants, a pool, and a double garage." "Then what the hell are you crying for, old man?" "I can't remember where I live." "Doctor, my penis has got brown spots." Doctor examines him and asks, "Are you married?" "No." "Any girlfriend, boyfriend?" "No, no." "Do you visit brothels, call girls?" "Never." "It's rust." There was once a very successful farmer from Texas who started gaining interest in his ancestry. After doing some digging, he traced his lineage back to a small town in Ireland, and lo and behold, they were a family of farmers. So he packed his bags and took a trip to Ireland to visit the small town to see if he could track down some of his kin. After landing in Dublin and driving an hour outside of the city, he stopped in a pub to grab a drink and start asking around about his family. The Texan sat down, ordered a pint, and started talking to the Irishman sitting at the bar. After explaining his story and the purpose of the trip, the Irishman responded, "You don't say. I've never heard of your family, but I am a farmer as well. Tell me, what's it like farming in Texas?" "Gladly," the Texan said. "Farming in Texas has been quite lucrative for me. If you started out in the morning and drove west, you could drive all day before you reached the end of my property. And if you started the next day and drove east all day, you wouldn't reach the end of my farmland." "Ah, I know what you mean," said the Irishman. "I've got a tractor like that as well." There is a farmer with 3 beautiful daughters. He was always wary of them dating horrible guys, so he forbade them to date their entire teenage lives. But when they turned 18, the daughters told their father he couldn't stop them from dating anymore, and the farmer, instead of fighting with them, agreed, but under one condition. He wanted to meet their date, and if he decided he didn't like him, the farmer would shoot him with the shotgun he kept by the door. Immediately, all 3 girls find a date, and the first guy comes to the door to pick up the first daughter. The farmer greets the guy at the door with the shotgun in his hand, and the guy says, "Hello, my name's Joe, and I'm here for Flo. Is she ready to go?" This guy seems nice enough, so the farmer lets him take his daughter out on a date. The next guy comes to the door, and the farmer again opens the door with his shotgun in hand. The guy says, "Hi, I'm here for Betty. We're gonna go get some spaghetti. Is she ready?" The farmer lets this guy through because he too seems decent. The third and final guy walks up to the door and says, "Hey, I'm Chuck," and so the farmer shoots him. A programmer and his project manager board a train headed through the mountains. They can find no other place to sit except for 2 seats right across the aisle from a young woman and her grandmother. After a while, it becomes quite clear that the woman and the programmer are interested in each other as they keep looking at each other. Soon, the train passes into a tunnel and it is pitch black. There is the sound of a kiss followed by the sound of a slap. When the train finally emerges from the tunnel, the 4 sit there without saying a word. The grandmother thinks to herself, "It was very rude of that young man to kiss my granddaughter, but I am glad she slept him." The project manager thinks to himself, "I did not think the programmer was brave enough to kiss the woman, but I wish she hadn't missed him when she slapped me." The young woman thought to herself, "I am glad the guy kissed me, but I wish my grandmother had not slapped him." The programmer has a satisfied smile on his face and thinks, "Life is good. How often does a guy have a chance to kiss a beautiful woman and slap his project manager at the same time?" A young doctor had moved to a small town to replace a doctor who was retiring. The older doctor suggested that the young one accompany him on his rounds so that the community would become used to their new doctor. At the first house, a woman complains, "I've been a little sick to my stomach." The older doctor says, "Well, you've probably been overdoing the fresh fruit. Why not cut back on the amount you've been eating and see if that does the trick?" As they left, the younger man said, "You didn't even examine that woman. How did you come to your diagnosis so quickly?" "I didn't have to examine her. You notice I dropped my stethoscope on the floor in there? Well, when I bent over to pick it up, I noticed a half-dozen banana peels in the waste bin. I knew that was what probably was making her sick." The younger doctor said, "Pretty clever. If you don't mind, I think I'll try that at the next house." Arriving at the next house, they spent several minutes talking with a younger woman. She just didn't have the energy she once had and said, "I'm feeling terribly run down lately." "You've probably been doing too much for the church," the younger doctor told her. "Perhaps you should cut back a bit and see if that helps." As they left, the elder doctor said, "I know that woman well. Your diagnosis is almost certainly correct. She's very active in the church. But how did you arrive at it?" "I did what you did at the last house. I dropped my stethoscope, and when I bent down to retrieve it, I noticed the vicar under the bed."
A bear and a rabbit were walking in the forest one day when they stumbled across a magic frog. The frog told them both they have 3 wishes, but to use them wisely. So the bear thinks for a minute and then says, "I want all the bears in this forest to be female, except for me." Then the rabbit says, "I would like a motorcycle helmet." The frog asks the rabbit, "Are you sure this is what you want?" "Yes," the rabbit says. "Then I will grant it." Now the bear thinks for a minute and says, "I want all the bears in the surrounding forests to be female, except me." Then the rabbit thinks for a minute and says, "I would love a motorcycle." "Are you sure you want this as your second wish?" says the frog. "Yes, I do," says the rabbit. "Well then, granted," says the frog. "Now you both only have 1 wish left, so pick it wisely," says the frog. After a long wait, the bear and the rabbit are ready to make their wishes. The bear says, "I want all the bears in the world to be female, except me." "Wish granted," says the frog. "How about your last wish?" says the frog. The rabbit starts up his motorcycle and puts on his helmet. Then, as he starts to take off, he says, "I want this bear here to be gay." Wish granted. A wise old gentleman retired and purchased a modest home near a junior high school. He spent the first few weeks of his retirement in peace and contentment. Then a new school year began. The very next afternoon, 3 young boys, full of youthful after-school enthusiasm, came down his street, beating merrily on every trash can they encountered. The crashing percussion continued day after day, until finally the wise old man decided it was time to take some action. The next afternoon, he walked out to meet the young percussionists as they banged their way down the street. Stopping them, he said, "You kids are a lot of fun. I like to see you express your exuberance like that. In fact, I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Will you do me a favor? I'll give you each $1 if you'll promise to come around every day and do your thing." The kids were elated and continued to do a bang-up job on the trash cans. After a few days, the old-timer greeted the kids again, but this time he had a sad smile on his face. "This recession's really putting a big dent in my income," he told them. "From now on, I'll only be able to pay you 50 cents to beat on the cans." The noisemakers were obviously displeased, but they did accept his offer and continued their afternoon ruckus. A few days later, the wily retiree approached them again as they drummed their way down the street. "Look," he said, "I haven't received my Social Security check yet, so I'm not going to be able to give you more than 25 cents. Will that be okay?" "A lousy quarter?" the drum leader exclaimed. "If you think we're going to waste our time beating these cans around for a quarter, you're nuts. No way, mister. We quit." And the old man enjoyed peace. A 17-year-old boy who works part-time at Pizza Hut drives up to park in front of the house in a beautiful Porsche. Naturally, his parents know that there's no way he earned enough with his after-school job to buy such a car. "Where did you get that car?" his mom and dad scream in shock. "I bought it today," replied the teen calmly. "With what money, young man?" his mom demands. "We know how much a Porsche costs, and you cannot afford it." "Well, it's used, and I got a good deal," says the boy. "This one cost me $20. "Who on earth would sell a car like that for $20? "The woman up the street," the boy replies. "I don't know her name. She just moved in. She ordered a pizza, and when I delivered it to her, she asked me if I wanted to buy a Porsche for $20. The boy's dad and mom hurry over to their new neighbor's house, ready to demand an explanation. Curiously, their new neighbor is calmly planting flowers in her front yard. "I'm the father of the kid you just sold a sports car for $20, the dad says. "I need an explanation from you." "Well," the woman says, not looking up from her garden, "this morning I got a phone call from my husband. I thought he was on a business trip in Florida, but it seems he has run off to Hawaii with his secretary and doesn't intend to come back."
"What on earth does that have to do with selling our son a Porsche for $20? The boy's mom asks, utterly perplexed. The new neighbor smiles very big and pauses for a minute. "Well, my husband asked me to sell his new Porsche and send him the money. So I did."
A kid asks his grandmother, "How come I've never seen you and Grandpa fight? I see Mom and Dad fight from time to time, but I've never seen you and Granddaddy fight. Why is that?" "Well," says the grandma, "we got married in the old church in the middle of the town. After the marriage ceremony, we hopped on our horse carriage. It was a long time ago when horse carriages were still a thing and cars were just starting to come around. And we went our way to our farm that was a bit away from town, but half there the horse stopped and it refused to start walking again. So your grandpa got down, stood in front of the horse, looked it directly in his eyes and said, 1. He got up on the carriage again and the horse started walking. I thought that would be it. But then, a few miles ahead, the horse again stopped and refused to keep walking. The horse was not tired or thirsty or hungry, he was just being stubborn. So your grandpa got down, stood in front of the horse, looked directly in his eyes and said, 2. He hopped on and we continued on our way with the horse walking again. When we were almost at the farm, the horse decided to stop again and wouldn't walk. Your grandpa, he got down, looked the horse directly in its eyes, and as he said, 3, he pulled out his gun and he shot the horse right between the eyes. For a second, I was just stunned. He calmly started walking towards the carriage and I started yelling at him. "What's wrong with you? Why did you do that for? Now how are we going to get the carriage to the farm? Why did you have to shoot the horse?" He looked me directly in the eyes and said, 1.
An elderly couple were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, so they decided to return to the little town where they first met. They sat in a small coffee shop in the town and were telling the waitress about their love for each other and how they met at this same spot. Sitting next to them was the local cop, and he smiled as the old couple spoke. After the waitress left the table, the old man said to his wife, "Remember the first time we made love? It was up in that field across the road when I put you against the fence. Why don't we do it again for old time's sake?" The wife giggled like crazy and said, "Sure, why not?" So off they went out the door and across to the field. The cop smiled to himself, thinking how romantic this was, and decided he better keep an eye on the couple so they didn't run into any harm. The old couple walked to the field, and as they approached the fence, they began to undress. The old man picked up his wife when they were naked and leaned her against the fence. The cop was watching from the bushes and was surprised at what he saw. With the vitality of youth, the wife bounced up and down excitedly while the husband thrashed around like a wild man, and then they both fell to the ground in exhaustion. Eventually, they stood up, shook themselves, and got dressed. As they walked back towards the road, the cop stepped from his hiding spot and said, "That is the most wonderful lovemaking I have ever seen. You must have been a wild couple when you were young." "Not really," said the old man. "When we were young, that fence wasn't electric."
John went to visit his 90-year-old grandfather in a very secluded rural area of Saskatchewan. After spending a great evening chatting the night away, the next morning John's grandfather prepared a breakfast of bacon, eggs, and toast. However, John noticed a film-like substance on his plate and questioned his grandfather, asking, "Are these plates clean?" His grandfather replied, "They're as clean as cold water can get 'em. Just you go ahead and finish your meal, sonny." For lunch, the old man made hamburgers. Again, John was concerned about the plates as his appeared to have tiny specks around the edge that looked like dried egg and asked, "Are you sure these plates are clean?" Without looking up, the old man said, "I told you before, sonny, those dishes are as clean as cold water can get 'em. Now don't you fret, I don't want to hear another word about it."
Later that afternoon, John was on his way to a nearby town, and as he was leaving, his grandfather's dog started to growl and wouldn't let him pass. John yelled, "Grandfather, your dog won't let me get to my car." Without diverting his attention from the football game he was watching on TV, the old man shouted, "Cold water, go lay down now, you hear me?"